doing some work on my Tomos A3 Puch special. It's got a Puch maxi barrel and head, and it's got a hybrid ignition system, so it's a 6-volt Puch ignition coil with a 12-volt A3 lighting coil. Still running the regulator, which is up in there somewhere, for the lights. So these are some of the tools that you'll need to get the 17mm bolt on the foot peg undone. You need a 7mm socket. To undo the nut on top of the collar pin, you need a 11mm spanner, and then a drift and a hammer to drive the pin out. And then all the kickstart parts will then sort of come out in one go. To remove the side case, then there's 3 cheesehead screws in these locations. If they're not that tight, you can use a large flat-bladed screwdriver. If they're tight, you can end up damaging them, so use an impact driver with an even larger hammer. Once you've got everything apart, you'll find that there aren't any timer marks as standard on the magnetic flywheel, so you need to find out where your top of the centre mark is before you can then work out marking points to when the points should open. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. First of all, you can use a device like this to measure where top dead centre is. This is marked in millimetres. Top dead centre needs to be, when it's basically its furthest amount of travel, what you then do is back it off 1.8 to 2mm, and that will be where your point should be opening. You can have issues with these if you turn the flywheel in the wrong direction, because if there's any amount of solid free play in the piston and the small end bearing, it can give you kind of a slightly wrong reading. I found a more accurate way of doing it is to use a piston stop. You can buy proper piston stops, but this is actually an alloy wheel bolt, 49mm long, off a Mini 1, the BMW Mini, not a Nostit Mini. This is the same thread as a spark plug. So what I do is screw that into the engine, take the flywheel slowly until it just touches and stops the end of the bolt, and then in there, you see it, there's a little bump on the casing. I put a black Sharpie mark on there, put a marker mark, and then another one on the flywheel, and I rotate it the other way until it stops again, make another mark. And then, using this, which is a printable ruler, you need to find out what the distance is between those two marks. Whatever the halfway point is top dead centre, and then make your mark. TDC is there on your flywheel. Then you need to make another mark to the left of that, because your points need to open before top dead centre. On an A3 it will be 24mm, and on an A35 it will be 20mm. Now the circumference of the flywheels is 360mm, so 1mm equals 1 degree, which is very handy. So you can just use a millimetre scale ruler to mark them out. And what I do is I rotate it backwards, so you'll notice that the points will open and then close, and then when you rotate in the right direction, you'll be able to see then the points open. If they open when your 25-degree mark or your 20-degree mark, depending on your engine type of bike, opens, then your timing is fine, you don't need to adjust it. If it's not open at the right time, then you need to slacken off the 3 little cheesehead screws on the stator plate and rotate it in the right direction before the actual points open at the right mark. Now it's hard to explain this with the flywheel on, even though you have to do it with the flywheel on. So here's the stator plate here, and it's the the little cheesehead screws in these holes need to slacken off. Don't do them totally, just slacken off enough so you can rotate it. So if you need to retard the timing to get it closer towards top of the centre, do it that way. If you need to advance the timing, that way. Generally speaking, most of the ones I set the timing on, the good starting point is to have the little cheesehead screws in the middle position on the slots. I've found on some of them it's just slightly ahead of it, so it's about there rather than there. That's a good starting point. Again, you have to do all this with this in place so you can keep checking it. Once you've got them opening at the right time, rotate it so the points are fully open, and then check your points gap using a set of feeler gauges. So it's 0.35 to 0.45 mil metric, or 14th out to 18th hour imperial, depending on what gauges you've got. Again, if the gap needs adjusting, there is, I don't know if you can see that on here, this one here, slacken that off, and then you can put a screwdriver in that slot there, and just by twisting it slightly, you can then open and close the gap to where you want it. Check it again with your feeler gauges, and it's all properly done. Your points gap is set. All that can be done with the magneto flywheel in place. If you do need to change the points because they've worn out and you can't get the adjustment anymore, it's a common problem. The light's going to get, this here, the little heel here wears down, and eventually it gets impossible to set the timing right. So yeah, if you do need to change the points because of that, or you've found that you've got no spark but there's a spark across the points, that's because your condenser's gone, you'll need to remove the flywheel. To do that, you'll need a strap wrench, the flywheel pulling tool to do it properly. But you don't need that if you're just setting the actual timing and your points are fine, you're just checking the gap on it. Once everything's back together again, bolt everything up, put your side casing back on, kickstart assembly back on, foot peg back on. Last thing to check, find it, spark plug. These actually use a smaller gap than what you'd expect on say a car or 4-stroke engine. It's around about 5.6. There's usually traditional sort of car engine would be about 0.7. Modern cars can be almost up to like 1 mil or a little bit more. That's also crucial. If your gap is too big, it'll affect your spark and affect the running of the engine, so make sure you get that right as well. And then go take it for a test ride. If you're having hot start problems, sometimes it's due to the timing being too far retarded. If you are running like a cylinder kit or anything like that, I've never really changed the timing, and I've just kept it the stock timing. At the end of the day, you're only increasing the capacity, it still needs to fire at the same point as it's always done. If you find that it is running a bit hot, check your jetting, just make sure it's not leaning out because you're just not got enough fuel to compensate for it being a bigger bore barrel. Same goes for high compression heads. Sometimes, like the A35, I think it's 20 degrees because you've got a little bit more compression. So if you are running like high compression on an A3, try 20 degrees the same. But this one runs 24 degrees. Even though it's a Puch Maxi setup, and Puchs actually run around about 18 to 15 degrees before top dead center, but I'm using stock A3 timing and it runs fine. So yeah, once you know how to measure things and check things and take stuff apart, it's just a matter of experimenting and finding what's best for you. But this should give you a good baseline on how to get the stock timing set. Thanks for watching.